Book Summary: The Talent Code. Author: Daniel Coyle. Chapter 1: The Sweet Spot. Deep practice is the engine of talent development, not mindless, repetitive practice, but fiery practice where one makes mistakes, stops, corrects, and tries again with maximum focus. Daniel Coyle begins with a journey to talent hotbeds, from dusty futsal courts in Brazil to a Russian tennis academy. There, children learn to play instinctively and correct mistakes as if their lives depend on each touch of the ball. With futsal, a small field, heavier ball version of soccer, players touch the ball 600% more, turning each error into an opportunity to learn, correct, and improve. Clarissa, a high school student, is a living testament to the sweet spot, the boundary where talent begins to blossom. In a video of her clarinet practice, she pauses after each segment, rewinds, repeats, sings the melody in her head, and fixes a tiny detail. Instead of playing from start to finish, she focuses on the hardest parts. The result? She makes remarkable progress in just a few minutes, a performance not due to innate genius but the triumph of deep practice. From there, Coyle takes readers to 1930 with Edwin Link, the inventor of the first flight simulator. Pilots learn not through dry lectures but by trial, error, and correction in a safe environment. Mistakes were no longer failures but fuel for progress. The science behind this miracle is myelin, the insulating sheath around nerve fibers. Each time we practice with purpose, the myelin layer thickens, speeding up and refining the brain's signal transmission. Myelin is like protective paint: the more carefully you apply it, through skilled practice, the faster the signal, the stronger the skill. Coyle cites a vocabulary experiment: learners remembered better when asked to complete missing letter words, because when we stumble while learning, the brain retains more deeply. The feeling of stumbling is the sign you're in the right sweet spot, the boundary where current ability meets waiting potential. With a narrative style like guiding an exploration, Coyle completely debunks the notion of innate talent. He emphasizes that it's in the struggle, repetition, and correction, painful yet alert, where talent is forged. Deep practice isn't pleasant, but it's the only path to the peak. The sweet spot is not just where we learn best but where we learn the right way, with full presence, effort, and courage to face mistakes. Chapter 2: The Deep Practice Cell. Coyle opens the chapter with an image straight out of science fiction: squid-like cells glowing, called oligodendrocytes, wrapping around nerve fibers as if encasing transoceanic fiber optic cables. This is the process of myelin formation, the insulating material quietly building talent. Myelin, the sausage-like sheath around nerve fibers, transforms flickering neural signals into high-speed information streams, like upgrading from copper wire to a T3 line. Each deep practice session, whether a golf swing, a guitar chord, or a chess move, sends a signal through a neural circuit, triggering myelin's arms to wrap an additional insulating layer, making that circuit thicker, faster, and more precise. Coyle emphasizes, mistakes are a biological requirement. To optimize a skill circuit, we must repeatedly activate it in an imperfect state, meaning we must make errors, recognize them, and correct them. Each repetition adds a new layer of myelin. The more we practice correctly, the more refined the circuit, the sharper the skill. He quotes neuroscientist Douglas Fields: myelin doesn't care who you are, only what you do. It doesn't distinguish whether you're playing piano, soccer, or learning Chinese. Whichever circuit is used, it wraps that circuit. Myelin is the most democratic biological mechanism: the more you do, the more you gain. Evidence abounds. Studies show pianists have thicker myelin in brain regions tied to music. Children learn better because myelin grows rapidly in youth, but adults continue accumulating myelin throughout life. In one study, baby rats playing with toys, even learning to use toy trucks, developed 25% more white matter, myelin, than those who didn't play. And then there's Tiger Woods. When asked if Tiger has a lot of myelin, Fields replies without hesitation, absolutely. He's got tons. Each hour of Woods' practice adds myelin to the intricate neural circuits controlling his perfect swing. This chapter isn't just describing a biological mechanism. It's a shattering blow to the outdated belief in innate talent. Coyle writes as if unveiling a Copernican revolution of talent, skill resides not elsewhere but in the myelin layers you build daily. He concludes with a bold assertion: practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes myelin, and myelin makes perfect. Chapter 3: The Brontes, the Z-Boys, and the Renaissance. Deep practice isn't a modern invention. It's the silent red thread woven through history's eras, where talent isn't born but forged, bit by bit. In the desolate moors of Haworth, sisters Charlotte, Emily, and Anne Bronte lived in a cold grey house with a strict father. Without renowned teachers, only fueled by blazing imagination and tiny homemade books, they created imaginary worlds like Gondol, crafting characters like Julius Brenzada and Augusta Geraldine Almeida, precursors to Heathcliff and Catherine in Wuthering Heights. Writing ceaselessly, revising each line, debating, and building plots as if playing a literary Dungeons and Dragons. This was deep practice in action: err and correct, imagine and verify, write and rewrite. Not genius but persistent play, wrapping millions of neural circuits with myelin daily. Fast forward to 1970s California, a group of scruffy, sunburned teens, the Z-Boys, started skateboarding in Dogtown. They followed no rules but their own. Each day, when the surf was flat, they took their boards to the streets, then discovered their secret weapon: empty swimming pools. Success didn't come from spontaneity but from thousands of falls, hundreds of midair spins. Those concrete pools were myelin forges. Each fall, each correction, added a new insulating layer to skill circuits. The Z-Boys turned skateboarding into a language, a powerful music like playing electric guitar on curved walls. Back further to Renaissance Italy, Michelangelo, from age 6, lived among stonecutters, wielding a hammer before he could read. Later, he trained in guild workshops, starting with grinding pigments, copying drawings, then painting frescoes. Tens of thousands of hours in the studio didn't just create David or Pieta, they built the man himself. Michelangelo said, "If people knew how hard I worked to achieve this mastery, it wouldn't seem so marvelous." Coyle asserts, talent isn't a divine spark. It's nurtured through repeated action, the right environment, and persistence. He cites George Bartzokis, a UCLA neuroscientist, noting that myelin continues to grow until around age 50, explaining why wisdom and talent often peak in middle age, as with Michael Jordan. Looking back, from the Brontes' tiny books, the Z-Boys' pool spins, to Michelangelo's marble-touching hands, all prove that talent is the biological outcome of deep practice, not a divine gift. This chapter is a powerful reminder: all greatness begins with small things, repeated thousands of times with focus and passion. Chapter 4: The 3 Rules of Deep Practice. Deep practice isn't magic. It's a process, and like any effective process, it has rules. Daniel Coyle calls them the 3 golden rules: chunk it up, repeat it, feel it. Chunking is the starting point. No one learns a symphony by playing it start to finish. At Meadowmount School of Music, talented students break a piece into seconds-long segments, practicing each bit slowly, as if frozen. Each segment is a micro-challenge where learners detect errors, pause, adjust, and retry, a perfect cycle to activate myelin. Repetition is the second rule. But not mindless repetition, purposeful repetition. The more a neural signal is used, the thicker the myelin sheath around it. Brazilian futsal players don't just play a lot, they repeat the same moves thousands of times: spins, pushes, direction changes, each a precise forging of the nervous system. Feeling it is the final, most subtle rule. Coyle calls it sacred dissatisfaction. It's when you sense something isn't right, and that feeling drives you further. Like a toddler learning to walk, falling hundreds of times but never giving up. Each fall adjusts the brain. A study shows, the more toddlers fall, the faster they learn to walk. At Moscow's Spartak Tennis Club, this rule is revered like a ritual. Students don't compete much, they mimic perfect movements, technika and imitatia, at slow speeds. They don't practice to win, they practice to adjust. Spartak doesn't train tennis players. It cultivates myelin. These 3 rules aren't exclusive to artists or athletes. They're a universal formula, from solving math, learning languages, to writing or coding software. Coyle calls this the sweet spot, where you constantly enter a state of positive tension, err and correct, stumble but don't quit. That's where talent is forged. Chapter 5, Primal Cues. Talent, however brilliant, needs a spark to start. Daniel Coyle calls this spark ignition, the mental moment when someone deeply feels in their heart, I can do this. It's the primal drive that propels relentless deep practice, repeating, erring, and correcting, persisting even without prompting. Ignition doesn't come from books or logic. It ignites from primal cues, biological triggers rooted in the nervous system. A prime example is Se-Ri Pak, the Korean golfer who won the 1998 U.S. Women's Open. As she removed her shoes and waded through a stream during a playoff, the image was broadcast live across South Korea. For millions of girls, it wasn't just a match, it was a declaration that someone like me can win. Within less than 2 decades, over a third of LPGA players were Korean. Similarly, in Curacao, a tiny island of under 150,000, Andrew Jones, at 19, hit 2 home runs in the 1996 World Series. The island erupted. Weeks later, fields were packed with kids. No one forced them, no camps were organized. They came because they believed, if he did it, I can too. Coyle explains that such primal cues often appear in 3 forms, a sense of being chosen, scarcity, and personal loss. In Harlem, kids randomly selected by lottery to learn violin leaped with joy, not because they loved violin, but because they felt chosen. That feeling sparked belief, turning into repeated action. Meanwhile, psychologist Marvin Eisenstadt found that many great figures like Mozart, Freud, or Gandhi lost a parent young. He called this a massive compensatory energy surge, when a deep emotional void becomes intrinsic motivation to rise, to prove something to the world, or oneself. Another unexpected factor, birth order. Many top sprinters, from Usain Bolt to Carl Lewis, are youngest siblings. Born behind, they must catch up. That process, running with siblings, losing, trying, falling, correcting, unwittingly triggers endless deep practice cycles. Coyle emphasizes that ignition isn't just a fleeting moment. It's a process nurtured through culture, environment, and belief. A community like Curacao, where everyone believes we can reach the major leagues, is a fire-nurturing environment. The key isn't who inspires you but what signal you receive, a sense of being left behind, a desire to belong, or even an unhealed pain. By recognizing the primal cues around you, a game, an idol, a loss, you can turn them into fuel. Once the ignition flame is sparked, it can burn forever, illuminating the path of deep practice, overcoming challenges, and turning aspiration into reality. Chapter 6, The Curacao Experiment. Every August, at the Little League World Series in Pennsylvania, the 11 to 12-year-old team from tiny Curacao reenacts a modern David versus Goliath story. In a competition filled with tall, muscular boys, the small, unassuming Curacao kids, from a place many haven't heard of, consistently advance far. They won in 2004, were runners-up in 2005, and reached the semifinals 6 times in 8 years, a record that stunned experts. This miracle began with a 6-second moment on October 20, 1996, at Yankee Stadium. In the World Series opener, a nearly unknown 19-year-old named Andrew Jones hit 2 consecutive home runs, one to the 10th row, the next even farther. The world was stunned. In Willemstad, Curaçao's capital, people cheered as if an earthquake struck. Weeks later, 400 kids signed up for baseball, many never having held a bat. Curaçao sparked a baseball generation. Unlike Aruba, a nearby island with similar culture, population, and sports passion, Curaçao sustained the flame, while Aruba didn't. Aruba had Sidney Ponson, a bright young talent, but his career faded due to alcohol and violence. Meanwhile, Andrew Jones became an all-star, won 10 Gold Gloves, and, most crucially, remained an enduring inspiration. Coyle explains that Curaçao didn't just have an ignition spark but an ecosystem to sustain it. Walls covered with memorabilia at Frank Curiel Field, kids vying to wear old LLWS caps, stories retold about Jones, all created a motivational electric field where anyone entering felt, I can be that person. In Curaçao, Kids don't just play baseball. They live in baseball. Coaches get midnight calls to settle disputes over sacrifice fly rules. Parents memorize tactics, training alongside kids with pro-level regimens. 4-year-olds run the fields, 10-year-olds dream of Williamsport, and older ones eye MLB scouts by the fence. Each step is a rung on a primal selection ladder, from local teams to international tournaments, then pro leagues. For Coyle, Curaçao vividly illustrates that ignition doesn't exist in isolation. A magical moment like Jones' hit is the starting point. But the community, with repeated signals, belief, culture, and nurtured aspiration, keeps the flame burning. When that happens, every ballfield in the world, not just Curaçao, can become a birthplace of extraordinary talent. Chapter 7: How to Ignite a Hotbed. Some talent hotbeds appear like lightning in a clear sky, a historic win, a breakout star. But others grow step by step, quietly, without miracles. Kip, the Knowledge is Power program, is such an example. Kip was born one winter night in 1993 in Houston, when two young teachers, Mike Feinberg and Dave Levin, frustrated with the public education system, decided, instead of fighting it, they'd create something new. They printed a manifesto at 5 a.m. with 4 pillars: more teaching hours, high-quality teachers, parental and school support. The program's name was ambitiously set: Knowledge is Power. Kip began in a small room with 50 struggling students. Yet somehow, these kids, once failing math and reading, started working hard. They studied all day, even Saturdays. Within a year, 90% passed state exams. Years later, Kip expanded across the U.S., from New York to Los Angeles, with 66 schools and over 16,000 students. 80% of them went to college. The miracle wasn't in the curriculum or hours but in the mental signal: college. Each classroom bore a real university's name. 5th graders visited Stanford, UCLA. By 7th grade, they saw Yale, Columbia. Teachers constantly asked, "Where will you go to college?" Bathroom mirrors boldly displayed, "Where will you go to college?" Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck studied a seemingly simple truth: how praise shapes futures. Praising kids as smart led them to pick easy tasks to avoid mistakes. Praising hard work led them to choose tough tasks, erring and correcting. 6 words of right praise could boost scores by 30%, not by magic, but by fostering the feeling, "I'm growing." Kip didn't teach with empty faith. They built a behavioral stage like a Broadway play. Students were called teammates, school days began with flag ceremonies, chants, Star Wars music, and speeches: "You're on a spaceship to college. Everything here must be earned. Want desks? Earn them." Kip sent 3 primal cues: you belong to a group, your group is in a strange and tough place, and the destination is the mountaintop, college. Like Brazilian soccer players or Russian tennis stars, Kip created a world of signals, where the feeling icon was reinforced daily. Coyle concludes, creating a talent hotbed doesn't require miracles. It needs an ecosystem where the right signals are repeated, where a culture of belonging and aspiration is celebrated. No one is born great, but anyone can reach it, if they live in an environment that knows how to spark the fire. Chapter 8: The Talent Whisperers. When imagining a great coach, we often picture a charismatic leader, someone with vision, vast experience, standing on a podium inspiring like a general. But Daniel Coyle argues that talent hotbeds reveal a different kind of coach: quiet, patient, with an uncanny ability to read their students' inner selves. They are talent whisperers. Hans Jensen, a cello teacher at Meadowmount, is a prime example. When students sang Ye played Dvorak's concerto technically flawlessly, Jensen wasn't satisfied. He leaned close, hands waving like a conductor, shouting in a passionate Danish accent, "Now! There is only now! Go wah," like a turbine, not just to teach technique, but to awaken intense emotion in the students playing. Conversely, with Whitney Delphos, a student trembling with fear, Jensen gently touched her bow, smiled, and whispered, "Sink it." Not her hand, but her head, he pointed to her forehead, urging her to imagine the music in her mind. Jensen didn't always shout or gesture. Each student needed a different approach, and Jensen could transform to match. Similarly, Tom Martinez, a football coach, was sought by NFL teams not for fame but for his ability to connect people. He coached Tom Brady from age 13, teaching everything from dropbacks to arm motions. With Jamarcus Russell, an untested star, Martinez didn't start with technique but with a heartfelt talk. "I don't need you to make a name for me. I just want a signed jersey for my grandson." That simple remark broke the ice and built trust, what Martinez called the code to access the learning process. Linda Septien, who trained Jessica Simpson, didn't use a fixed formula. Seeing a student with a beautiful but churchy voice lacking expression and control, she spent 2 years fixing vibrato, then years more teaching performance and audience connection. For Septien, the voice box is just muscle. Every great voice requires thousands of hours of honing. The common thread among these whisperers is keen observation, personalized responses, and quiet dedication. They don't need speeches. They fix tiny details, adjust every glance, and most crucially, they know what students need, often before the students themselves realize it. Coyle cites Benjamin Bloom's research, surveying hundreds of top talents. Surprisingly, most successful people started with average teachers, those who taught with warmth, closeness, and ignited a love for learning. This shows, success doesn't come from the teacher's greatness but from the connection between teacher and learner, nurtured over time. Coyle concludes, master coaches aren't commanders. They're planters, nurturing tiny signals, quietly standing behind as students shine. They don't teach success, they help students discover their own potential. And in any field, from sports fields to music rooms, any of us can become talent whisperers, with enough patience, listening, and love for teaching. Chapter 9, The Teaching Circuit, a Blueprint. A teacher can influence forever, because no one knows where that influence will end. This opens the final chapter of Part 3 in the Talent Code, where Daniel Coyle presents a blueprint for nurturing talent through deep teaching, what he calls the teaching circuit. Coyle argues that, though it seems magical, exceptional teaching is a composite skill, a set of neural circuits myelinated through deep practice. Drawing on Ron Gallimore's UCLA research, he identifies 4 core qualities every master coach possesses: deep knowledge, recognizing imperfect effort, precise connection, and strategic patience. John Wooden, legendary UCLA basketball coach, is a vivid example. When Gallimore and Tharp observed his practices, they were shocked to see he didn't give long lectures or rally cries. Instead, he delivered constant, sharp, brief feedback, like GPS directions: go left, keep the ball close, speed up, good, do it again. Nearly 75% of his remarks were specific instructions on doing it right, not praise or criticism. Linda Septien, who trained Jessica Simpson, used similar rapid feedback. In a 3-minute session, she gave dozens of cues, from emotional prompts, sing like a trumpet, to precise physical directions: use the yawn muscle, keep cheeks tight, clench the tongue. Each cue was personalized, timed perfectly, as if shaping neural pathways as they formed. Benjamin Bloom, in his famous study, showed that first teachers, often ordinary ones, play a critical role in sparking passion. An example is Mary Epperson, a music teacher in a ramshackle house by a creek, who could make kids feel that playing piano was a joy and learning a privilege. The common thread among master coaches, per Coyle, is they don't just impart skills but forge deep learning bonds, where students feel safe to err, encouraged to correct, and motivated to try. Coaching isn't control but guidance with empathy and knowledge, an art of human connection. The teaching circuit, literally, is a chain of signals guiding brain skill growth. But broadly, it's a roadmap to turn potential into reality. And anyone, teacher, coach, parent, or learner, can apply this blueprint, with enough patience, observation, and belief that talent isn't born, it's built, one small connection at a time. Chapter 10, Tom Martinez and the $60 million bet. In American football, decisions can cost tens of millions. In 2007, the Oakland Raiders, after a dismal 2-14 season, had the first NFL draft pick. They faced 2 choices: Calvin Johnson, dubbed the Michael Jordan of football, and Jamarcus Russell, an untested talent with an arm strong enough to throw 60 yards while kneeling. Unable to decide based on stats, Raiders executives did something surprising. They called Tom Martinez, a little-known coach from San Mateo College, who had trained Tom Brady. Martinez coached Jamarcus Russell for about 20 days pre-draft, refining throwing techniques, dropbacks, using short, specific cues, ball like fire, hold the ball like a plane taking off, like a waiter serving a dish. But Martinez didn't just teach technique. He knew that to unlock a player, connection came first. At their first meeting, Russell was guarded. Martinez said little, only, "I just want a signed photo for my grandson." That simple remark made Russell smile, dissolving all distance. Trust began with such a small gesture. Martinez observed not just the body but the mind. He spent time with Russell's family, met his uncle, a positive role model, and concluded, he could be the Shaquille O'Neal of football. In a formal workout with over 100 NFL reps, Russell threw 65 balls, missing only 5. The media exploded. The Raiders picked him first. When asked why, the head coach echoed Martinez's assessment nearly verbatim. But the story didn't end happily. Russell couldn't sustain practice commitment. Despite a dazzling start, he faded and was cut from the roster after 3 years. Martinez, with all his dedication, laid the first brick, but as he admitted, he couldn't do it alone. He needed consistent guidance, method, and language for 3 years. But they just gave him $60 million and said go win. Martinez and Russell's story vividly illustrates coaching's limits. A master coach can see potential, connect with a student, and spark fire. But success requires both sides to play, the teacher guiding, the learner willing to go all the way. Epilogue: The Myelin World. When starting this book, Daniel Coyle didn't expect to one day stand on a baseball field in Homer, Alaska, where his town's Little League team had lost every game for a decade, applying the principles he studied: deep practice, ignition, and master coaching. With 3 weeks to prepare and a roster including kids new to the sport, Coyle and his co-coaches, like Kip's Mike Feinberg and Dave Levin, followed the Butch Cassidy method. They slowed swings, like Meadowmont's teachers, having players mimic good swings repeatedly. Instead of mass coaching, they personalized cues, emphasizing memorable details. Like Tom Martinez, they taught defense with a miniature field, focusing on tactical thinking. To boost reflexes, they shortened pitching distance to 30 feet, forcing quicker reactions. When the team entered the official tournament, they didn't win, but for the first time in years, they competed evenly, took leads, and hit a memorable home run. Though defeated, they returned feeling a strange thrill. "We really played well." A parent exclaimed, "It's like a miracle." Back home, Coyle continued observing deep practice closest to him, his family. His daughter Zoe began violin, practicing a new song about a fat king, making constant errors, pausing, replaying. The melody was choppy, halting, and wonderful. "I'll practice this a zillion million times," Zoe said. "I'll play super good." With each repetition, Coyle envisioned myelin wrapping her neural circuits, layer by layer, lighting up like Christmas bulbs in her brain. Coyle cites neuroscientist George Bartzokis, noting myelin grows until around age 50. Though degeneration follows, we can build new myelin lifelong, explaining why those who learn and challenge their minds are less prone to Alzheimer's. He calls this cognitive reserve, built through deep practice, mistakes, and persistence. With a simple yet profound image, Coyle concludes, "We are myelin creatures." Talent doesn't come from genetic myths but from purposeful action, from choosing hard over easy, from teachers who guide rightly, and from ignition's flame sparked by a glance, a word, or a seemingly distant dream. The book closes with a call for each person to become the architect of their own talent, through deeper practice, inner fire, and meaningful connections. Because every effort, every corrected mistake, adds another myelin wrap. And in that silence, talent is born, not by magic, but by you.